Season 10 changed a lot of characters in the meta, and while we already talked about the best mains that you could be playing in Season 10, now we gotta talk about the opposite, the 10 worst mains that you could be playing in this season. These characters are either underpowered and in need of reworks or buffs, or they're just not fitting the meta right now. Regardless, we're gonna jump right in, but I really want to get to 100,000 subscribers before 2025, so if you could smash that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. And we have a lot of educational content in the pipeline, so if you want counter guides, tips and tricks on positioning and more, smash that subscribe and let's get into it. Now, before we talk about the list, I want to make it clear, you can climb to high ranks on any character. That's just how Overwatch is. If you're good enough at a character, you could definitely make it work. So if I say your favorite character as a worst, that doesn't mean you can't climb with that character in gold, diamond, masters, whatever rank in between. That being said, the first character on our list is definitely Hanzo. Hanzo's a character that has been falling further and further down, especially as of Season 9, with him no longer being able to one-shot consistently most of the squishies on the roster. Now, this was somewhat compensated by the fact that he had really huge hitboxes with his arrows, which honestly still didn't make him that good, but I think a lot of people overemphasized how impactful and powerful that was. It got it nerfed, and now he's just even way worse. Like, not being able to one-shot is such a huge deal for Hanzo, a character that his damage output is far less consistent than many other characters that are going to operate at the same ranges as him and kind of take similar engagements, right? Characters like Ashe and Sojourn, while not a one-to-one in playstyle, oftentimes they'll be operating in similar ranges, and especially when you take away the one-shot of Hanzo, his assassin playstyle completely goes out the window. He can no longer get like surprise one-shots on people, and really he's gonna have to play more spammy, more mid-range. And when you compare him not being able to one-shot to like Widow, who can, or other characters like Sojourn and Ashe, who are just far more consistent, especially at triggering that DPS passive, he really just falls flat. And I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, if you have a character where their whole kit is based around their one-shot as the primary source of their power, and then you remove that one-shot, the character needs compensation in the form of more abilities, maybe a completely reworked kit. Regardless, I think Hanzo's quite a bit underwhelming right now, and I wouldn't suggest picking him up for the first time as your main this season. Now, the next character that we definitely got to talk about is Illari, and this character actually did receive a minor buff, but really it doesn't matter because this character is still one of the weakest characters in the game. Now, this might seem kind of harsh, but really the problem with Illari is ever since we've moved over to Season 9 and 10, the raw damage that she outputs isn't as impactful relative to health totals, and it's with the added difference of not affecting people with the passive, right? The DPS passive. And the reason that that was so important is because before, Illari actually had pretty good dueling capabilities in the one-to-one or in the head-to-head and damage burst output comparatively to DPS in a way that you could play as like a functional third DPS. And that was really the way that she got all of her value, right? She could only heal and deal damage, so her utility came through damage. But now, if you consider health totals making everyone more bulky and then the DPS passive compensating to that, making everyone more bulky and then not getting the DPS passive is just like a straight up nerf to your damage-based potential, your dueling potential, the DPS part of her kit, and it makes her overall just less versatile than many of the other supports that can still do a lot of damage but do other things as well. Characters like Baptiste can just do the same amount of raw damage in a lot of ways, maybe not quite the same burst, but make up for it in so many other ways. And I really do think that this character is falling behind a lot of the other characters in the roster in the meta, to the point where, yeah, you can like smurf on this character and dominate, but other than that, a lot of other characters are going to be able to bring out more value relative to your mechanical skill and other skills, right? If you have really, really great aim, I think you can get more value on a lot of other supports and have more options, more carry potential. So overall, I don't think this is a really great time to pick up this character. Yeah, if you really just like a simplistic playstyle where you're really just kind of fragging out and just trying to go for crits and finding ways to damage in a fight and not having to worry so much about the healing aspect of the role, I think maybe Illari is fine, but maybe support isn't even for you, really. I don't know, but let me know down below how you feel about this character. What would you do to buff or change this character if you could to make her a little bit more viable or fun in the meta? Now, the next character that I definitely got to talk about is Reinhardt, and Reinhardt also got a buff where now the shatter keeps people on the ground a little bit longer, but really this doesn't fundamentally change Reinhardt's position as a character that I would not suggest to main. Now, I want to make a big caveat here because Reinhardt is still a pretty effective character in a lot of the ranks. I would say like lower than Diamond probably. This is because he really allows players to kind of rally behind him, really is like a driving force for creativity creating space, and he plays in a way where he is like a legit frontliner and someone that pushes forward as they take space, which seems kind of like, oh yeah, it's a tank, that's what all tanks do, but really they don't. Like, a lot of tanks, they'll poke down and apply pressure, or they'll push through and try to kill somebody, or, you know, they will dive in, right? All these tanks create space in different ways. Rein does it the most straightforward way, or one of the most straightforward, easy to follow ways, in a way that makes it really easy for, I would say, you know, teammates that maybe are uninformed or maybe even bad to still follow up on the value you're getting, right? So in a lot of ways, in the low ranks of play, he makes bad players better all around you. But as players get better and better, the weaknesses of Rein really start to show, where he's really easy to poke out, he's really easy to bully, he's really easy to flank, he's really bad in a lot of ways at doing the traditional front lining aspect of him when compared to a lot of the other brawlers that also have more versatile ways to fight. They can poke as well, they can just play the distance against Rein. So there's so many different weaknesses to Rein, and I think that it's really just the fault of power creep. But regardless of the reasoning, Rein is in a state where he's just not that viable unless you really know the ins and outs of every single matchup. And some games you're just kind of at the whim, the mercy, you know, the mercy of the lobby. And there are some Rein mains in high ranks, but they even will admit to so many games being games that they're just, it's just a loss. Like, they don't really feel like they have a lot of agency. If you're someone that is trying to main Rein, play Rein all the time, I wish you the best of luck. May you hit giant shatters. Now, the next character that we definitely got to talk about in this video is Reaper. And Reaper has been in such a weird state for a while, because there have been little pockets of time where he's actually decently good. I think he's actually good in, like, Ramatra metas, where he's decent against Ramatras in a weird way, because you can fight Ramatra straight up and heal up and kind of trade resources and even survive an ultimate and actually burst down the Ramatra. But in most games, he's just really not that great at dueling people relative to most of the cast. He's pretty easy to force out. His cooldown cycle is a little bit too long. And I really do think that the setups that are required for Reaper are just far too specific, that he will only ever be niche in metas unless he receives some massive buffs or some form of rework. And I do think that he could be a great character to, like, have as a side pick in certain situations, but I don't think I would ever suggest anyone to main Reaper if you're really legitimately trying to climb. He definitely could be a really hard character to work. There are some maps that are really great for him, maps like Ilios, where you can really sneak around, get that cycle set up on the high ground, drop down, get a kill, rate the way, teleport height, keep doing that over and over again. But on most maps, it's going to be really hard to set up. It's going to be really hard to force enemies into, like, the same choke points over and over again. So yeah, I would not suggest Reaper a lot of the time, most of the time, depending on the map. But the next character that we definitely got to talk about is Life Weaver. And I don't even really know what Blizzard is doing with this character right now, because this character is, I think, fundamentally flawed in a lot of ways, mainly because this character just tries to exist. That's like their whole value, is the fact that they're incredibly hard to kill and they can kind of make it so that their teammates are a lot harder to kill. But even pound for pound, their abilities are just weaker than a lot of their alternatives, right? I talk all the time about how Life Grip is a tempo negative play. It's so bad to pull your tank out of a fight if you could have instead kept them in the fight and just enabled them better, right? As an example to this, let's say that your Winston gets pulse bombed and he's holding, like, the corner. So he's holding a lot of space, he's holding the front corner, and he gets pulse bombed, right? In one scenario, you pull him completely out of the fight, and now he gives up all the space. He has to jump to reclaim it, or, you know, maybe he doesn't have that cooldown, and then he has to wait and then jump to reclaim it, or walk forward and take all this time. Or a Suzu comes out and you just save him and he gets to stay there, right? So using an ability that I think a giant percentage of the time is actually just worse than other abilities, like burst healing abilities, or especially Suzu, that just straight up save people. There are going to be some situations where someone's in a really bad position and you're literally saving them and nothing else could save them. But more often than not, I think those scenarios don't come up as often as you would think compared to the other ones, and you have to do that perfectly, or else you're just doing things completely wrong, and you might even be throwing the fight without knowing it, because you're pulling your tank out of a situation where they had cooldowns, they had resources that could have actually kept them up, but they were trying to kind of min-max those resources, right? They didn't want to just, like, pop an ability just to save them a little bit of damage. But you don't know that. As Life Weaver, you're kept guessing all the time. And I say that this is all a huge big deal because you don't have any other real agency besides living and trying to save people. Your damage is really marginal, if not forgettable. Your tree is not even close to one of the most powerful support ultimates in the game. And pedal is something that only certain characters could even utilize. I definitely think that you can carry and climb with this character, but it's something that is like the 51-49%, right? So like you're playing with the 1% of impact by playing really, really well. You play amazing and you're rocking a 51% win rate. You're playing really, really bad and you're rocking a 49% win rate, right? So you'd have to play so many games to actually see that win percentage actualized. I'm just not going to suggest Lifeweaver as a main for many, many people. Definitely could be a character that you whip out in the right situation, an anti-dive, something in your back pocket, but not a main, not a one trick, nothing like that. Now, the next character that we definitely got to talk about is Roadhog, and I will keep speaking pretty poorly about Roadhog for a lot of reasons. One, I think that the character is just not very consistent at one-shotting anymore, which is a fundamental problem. Like I said, if you remove the one-shot from a character, they need compensation, and Pigpen and, you know, Take a Breather doesn't really fix the fundamental problems of Roadhog. Doesn't allow him to be that impactful or maintain a lot of space. It just allows him to be hard to kill. At least that's how it was before they added the DPS passive. And now he is focusable, he is killable, and it was a direct huge nerf to him. And he didn't really get any compensation. And I'm not saying I want one-shot Hog back or anything like that. I'm saying that the rework doesn't make up for what was lost in a way that actually does anything besides make Hog just incredibly difficult to kill. And then he got nerfed. So overall, I think the character's in a weak state right now. His only true strength that is just staying alive is heavily neutered, especially when you compare him to some of the other meta picks like Orisa right now, or characters that are just better at staying alive. And overall, I just think that Roadhog is quite a bit lacking right now, and definitely not a character I would suggest you main or really even play all that often unless you're absolutely cracked and you hit every single hook you throw. Now, the next characters that we're going to talk about, I'm actually going to talk about two, both Sombra and Genji. Sombra did receive a nerf, and then Genji actually received a stealth nerf with his double jump now not working after he wall climbs, but I do think that they're going to fix that. It doesn't really seem that that's a nerf. It should be a bug. So by the time you're watching this, this might not be the case. But regardless, I think that it's generally pretty bad right now to play either of these characters if you're not playing them in a dive composition. And I want to make it clear that there's a huge distinction between like Tracer and Sombra and Genji. And Tracer did get a nerf, a recall nerf. But Tracer is still a much more viable character than these two. And the main reason is because Tracer can play in a lot of compositions as a character that just trades resources and duels really well, but Genji and Sombra are characters that want additional pressure added to the pressure they're creating, right? Sombra wants to all in a lot of engagements. Genji wants momentum, so people that keep creating more opportunities from him, and characters that can keep baiting out cooldowns with him, right? A Genji against stacks of support utility, it's really hard, but if you have other people on your side that are helping you bait out that cooldown or helping you create more momentum, Genji could be really, really good. And I'm not saying that you can't get Sombra or Genji to work in non-dive comps, but what I would say is, especially as of the most recent season and the past few seasons, honestly, I think these characters are characters that you mainly want to play in dive compositions, most notably with a dive tank, right? A tank that's going to create that space, and I would also throw Junker Queen in there as well. Someone that is going to engage with you or help you engage. I would not be playing, you know, Genjis with Orisas, Genjis with Sigmas, or whatever the case may be. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure there, and you're going to have a really low win rate relative. So, yeah, maybe not a one-trick season right now for Genji and Sombra. Still characters you can play, but maybe better to duo if you want to play it all the time, and so you could force set up those synergies. Now, the next hero that we definitely got to talk about in this video is undoubtedly Ana. And Ana is actually having a harder time now than she has in like the entire Overwatch 2 history, and it's been like that, you know, ever since basically last season. And the reason is because mobility is at a premium, and there are new maps that even punish you even more for not having mobility. So, you know, all the Flashpoint maps, if you play Ana, you're just going to get farmed and killed and murdered, especially as you climb the ranks of people who are actually playing mobility. Good luck making Ana work. And I do think that even more so in a lot of games, you know, just Ana is too much of a sitting duck without some form of protection. I think if you're rocking Ana, you really need to like rock some type of character that can protect, a character like Brig or something along those lines. Or if you're playing like an anti-dive strategy, maybe Cass, Ana, or something. But overall, Ana, even though she still is like the most popular character in the game, she's really just having a hard time. Her damage is less impactful now, 4-shotting a lot of characters instead of 3-shotting anybody anymore. Her nade has been heavily neutered as of a couple patches ago, and yeah, she just doesn't have any mobility. So there's just a lot of things that are kind of added to her, and she doesn't really have a way to protect herself. So the other characters that don't have great mobility, they do. I mean, if you compare her to a character like Baptiste, he has mobility, high ground mobility, and a way to protect himself. He's a lot harder to threaten out. And I'm not saying that Ana can't get a lot of value if you're left uncontested, right? If you're left free, you're going to win and carry the game. You do so much if you're uncontested. But how many times is that going to happen? It's only going to happen against players that don't realize that you're actually carrying the game. Any decent player is going to recognize that if you are left uncontested, you will carry the game from the back line, and they're going to target you incredibly hard, and it's going to be really hard for you to live without protection yourself. So, yeah, I'm not saying that you can't play Ana. I'm just saying that Ana's having a hard time. You either need to have higher skill, really smart positioning. You could check out my positioning guide if you want to know more about that. I also have an updated one on my Patreon if you want to check that out as well. Or you just need to be flexible and willing to swap off when things are not working out. But the last character is a tank, but it's not really a specific one. It's just generally, I think, especially as of, the past couple of seasons, one-tricking tank is really hard, and I would not suggest it at all. I think flexibility in the tanking role is at a premium. It's really, really hard for you to be a one-trick tank, mainly because you are the centerpiece for a lot of your team composition based on their strategy, based on how they're going to play around you. And you can get countered from the DPS role, from the tank role, from the support role. And if you're someone that is hard stuck on like one or even two tanks, it's going to be hard for you. And I'm not saying that you can't play your favorite tanks. I think it's important for you to be competent at multiple tanks so that you are not, feeling like you're throwing the game if you have to swap, right? That's my big tip here, is that as a tank player, flexibility is worth SR, and don't be afraid to be flexible or swap, because that is something that makes you a good player. Good players are flexible. Good players can play multiple characters, and they're good at those characters. You can't just swap to something and, think, oh, I'm playing the counter, I'm going to win. No, it's not going to happen. You have to be good at these characters and competent. But yeah, definitely would say you need to play more than one tank. But anyways, this is my worst characters for Season 10 right now. Definitely let me know if you think I missed any characters in the comments down below. And smash that subscribe button, whether you like, dislike, whatever the case may be. I want to get to 100,000 subscribers before 2025, and I'd really appreciate your support. Anyways, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.